Oh my god, so we have to talk about Sorry to Bother You, the wildly satirical, viciously funny, socially and politically charged new science fiction? Yes, science fiction comedy from writer, director, and sometimes rapper Boots Riley. Now this is going to get weird, so you best strap your fool selves in. Now if you've never heard of Boots Riley, that's okay. I'm not going to pull a, But he is undeniably a brilliant, imaginative, and if this film is any indication, fearless new voice in the cinematic trenches whose opening directorial salvo will likely and deservedly draw positive comparisons to the works of everyone from Spike Lee and Robert Townsend to Mel Brooks and Paul Verhoeven, and will remind you of any number of films from Hollywood Shuffle to District 9 while simultaneously managing to achieve a level of such total originality that it becomes strangely off-putting.
That is intriguing.
The equal parts hilarious and frightening events of Sorry to Bother You take place in a parallel yet instantly recognizable modern-day Oakland, where our down on his luck and behind on his rent protagonist Cassius Cash Green resides. Played with a relatable desperation by Lakeith Stanfield, whom you'll recall from strong outings in both the FX series Atlanta and the exceptional, not at all a comedy thank you very much Golden Globes, you feckless conclave of degenerates, horror masterpiece Get Out. Cash lives in his Uncle Sergio's garage with his girlfriend Detroit. Brooklyn Nine-Nine star and legitimate national treasure Terry Crews plays Sergio Green, whom I wish were in this movie more because, seriously, who doesn't want more Terry Crews? That's right, nobody. Annihilation and Thor Ragnarok's Tessa Thompson plays Detroit, Cash's artist-slash-activist girlfriend, who is as compelling as ever, which is saying something. In a film comprised almost entirely of bizarre scenes, Thompson successfully delivers one of the bizarrest. An interactive performance art piece wherein she reenacts a cringe-inducing scene from Barry Gordy's 80s martial arts cult classic The Last Dragon, which is a thing I never believed I'd ever have a reason to say out loud. Really, you kinda just have to see it. So what is this movie even about? The trailer would have you believe Cash takes a telemarketing job with the Regal View Company, struggling at first to make a sale, but soon finds himself on the fast track to success and the high-rolling life of a power caller when Danny Lethal Weapon Glover instructs him how to close deals by using his white voice. This newfound success begins to drive a wedge between he and his girlfriend, as well as his friends and co-workers, who have their sights on picketing Regal View for any number of grievances, not the least of which is the oppression of their workers. Admittedly, this is where things get a little
different.
But believe me when I tell you, this is barely a pit stop on the crazy train to Nutsville Sorry to Bother You rapidly careens toward. And while the whole white voice aspect, which has the luxury of being both funny thanks in no small part to vocal contributions from Patton Oswalt and David Cross, and thematically relevant, makes up only a small portion of the film's storyline, but we'll get to that. I mentioned Paul Verhoeven earlier because this reminds me so very much of him, particularly in the way the film depicts the media. Remember this guy from RoboCop?
I'd buy that for $1.
And how his bizarro variety show was one of only two things you could watch on television, the other being the film's very beyond-the-pale news broadcast interspersed with advertisements for only the most ludicrous of products. This is done in Sorry to Bother You to equal success. Only 3 programs seem to ever populate the airwaves in this alternate universe Oakland. There's the news, which is much as you'd expect, a so-called game show titled I Got the Shit Kicked Out of Me, which is designed explicitly to distract viewers from the all-too-real stranglehold being placed on them daily by the corporations that loom like giants over every aspect of their lives. And a barrage of commercials for a company called Worry Free, a new company that has effectively found a way to legalize slavery by offering their workers food, clothing, and substandard housing in exchange for a lifetime of employment. And by employment, I mean servitude. I mean, that's what it is. At first glance, it's a seemingly ludicrous proposition, but one that isn't even a little bit difficult to compare to our current socio-political landscape. Sorry to Bother You spends a fair amount of time dunking on capitalism, how the most inhuman behavior is frequently rewarded where businesses are concerned, and how all success comes at the expense of some part of the self, be it physical, emotional, or spiritual. In fact, the concept of selling out is very much at the heart of the film. Cash only experiences success in his new position when he elects to become something he isn't, someone he's not, someone acceptable, someone good for all time zones, as they say. On the surface, it's played for laughs, and from the reactions of the sold-out auditorium on opening night, it largely succeeds in winning them. But once the veneer wears away, once the underlying sickness reveals itself, the unease within the audience becomes palpable, undeniable, and you're allowed to see it for what it is. A piece of self, of identity, sacrificed for the sake of not only belonging, but existing in a world where others make and maintain the rules, where others attempt to determine not just your worth, but who you even are. It's telling that when Cash reaches the figurative and literal upper level, his true voice must be left behind. White voice at all times here, he is told by the Bond henchman like Mr. Blank, played by Amari Hardwick, with an arrested tension reminiscent of the victims from Get Out. It isn't subtle. The only way to stay here is to be who they want you to be. Your true self has no place here. Cash's climb to power caller status is nothing new to black Americans, who discover at a sadly early age that there are only certain types of black society finds acceptable for you to be. I should also point out that it isn't only the men who get to partake in the proceedings. Tessa Thompson's Detroit also avails herself of her very own white voice, provided by Darkest Hour's Lily James, a lilting English accent she uses when presenting her artwork in an endeavor to, like Cash, spare herself from being dismissed outright, to have her craft and herself taken seriously. Or at least, more seriously.
Wow, that's messed up.
While Boots Riley is unequivocally a new voice film is fortunate to have, and I eagerly anticipate his next feature, he does have some maturing to do. The first half of Sorry to Bother You is quite masterful, with a clear vision that is well executed and an effective counterintuitive score by Tune-Yards and The Coup, Riley's own hip-hop group, that at first seems at odds with the film, but quickly asserts itself as the ideal musical accompaniment. It's evident fairly early on that the movie does not give a damn what you think. It doesn't concern itself with what you're comfortable with, and to its benefit openly thumbs its nose at whatever expectations as a filmgoer you might have. It has been called unapologetic, and I can attest to that. That said, when Call Me By Your Name's Armie Hammer shows up as the deliciously unhinged CEO of Worry Free, the film skews into a narrative hairpin turn sharp enough to throw you from the vehicle. It is ambitious to say the least and comes out of nowhere blindsiding you. And while it is undoubtedly daring, it flaunts an almost Cartoon Network Adult Swim level of immaturity that undermines a measure of the gravity earned in the hour and change leading up to it, so much to the point where it becomes impossible to regain it. It's not for everyone, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel pockets of the audience immediately check out once the twist arrived. The film draws a distinct line in the sand, one you may find difficult to cross. With that in mind, and with several days now to ruminate on it, I can say that with its outstanding performances, tight direction, and fearless, self-assured, and original to the point of being traumatic storytelling, Sorry to Bother You is a bold, brilliant, often hilarious, yet sometimes messy introduction to Boots Riley, the filmmaker, and as memorable a debut as any director could hope to achieve. I'm giving Sorry to Bother You 4.25 stars. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed today's episode, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and follow Tangent1985 on Twitter for more updates. I'm M. Glenn Gore, and I'll see you next time.